tries to transform them into, something which is not going to happen because these were basically built for colonial ends. Both.
Yeah, all these institutions, vets, whatever you call it, they are built for purpose. Not to inculcate knowledge in you, but to make sure that your brain absorbs everything that Stefan Verbe says to you. Language in itself it's a tool for national building. But the problem is we don't know where to start. The starting point is to Africanize nationalism. It must be African nationalism. Let's make it a bounding blue that takes Xhosa, Zulu, Sotho, what together. Look at ourselves as Africans, not South Africans, as Africans. Even South Africa itself is not yours. You are just in transit here to the graveyard.
I think what you're saying is very important. People will forget that they are Africans before they are South Africans.
That's right.
So they forget that they were born in Africa. They only look at the part of Africa where they were born.
Where they were born.
And
it was created for them. It was never there. South Africa was never there until 31st of May, 1910. It was never there. There was no country called South Africa. It was made by Britain and the Boers. Why? So that, because it was during the Bambata thing, and the British, they drove the British to the boundaries of South Africa in Lady Smith. Britain realized that we are facing a very big trouble. They talked to Herzog. They talked to Paul Kruger. Gentlemen, the Swart Gevaar is upon us. Let's come together. And that's how they formed the Union of South Africa, by bringing the British colonies of Natal and Cape with the two Boer republics of the Transvaal and Free State together to form one union, which will be a deterrent to any Swart Gevaar. That was the whole thing. Yeah, that was the whole thing. Now, South Africa was never built for us. And it was never built to share it with us. It was built for the white minority interest, by the minority. We were never there. They never told us that there's something coming in. Therefore, it's a free state. One free state. The name Free State was never there. That country was called, and while it was still a country, it was called the River State, after the Olifants River, which is running there. Now, when Britain, in 1856, started to promote Lesotho to a kingdom, they were so red because Kimberley, Cape Town were under Britain. Botswana, Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe were under Britain. So the Boers saw that they were the ancestors. The Boers in the Free State. So they spoke to King Orange in Netherlands for support. And he happened to land in Bloemfontein on the date of his birthday. They gave him that province as a gift, and it became a free state.
And it was Orange State.
Yeah. It was River State. Now it became Orange. Orange is the king of yeah. Orange Free State. Nobody must touch it. That's how Free State became Free State. We were not invited. Huh?
So, let's go back to the question of language and the liberation struggle. Of course, amongst the aims, the stated aims of the liberation movement was to unify African people into a singular force.
Yeah.
So, where did we fail?
We failed in nationalization of the languages or the African people. African nationalism should have been a driving force. That we're together. Don't call yourself Xhosa, you call yourself an African. The enemy of Mosotho is the enemy of the Xhosa. The enemy of Mosotho. The enemy is one, and we are. And that is why we could not be able to bring the whole people together. And if you, 1963, when the Bantustans were started, they started in the Transkei. They started in the Transkei because they wanted to slash this unity of the African people. They had the Transkei, they had the Ciskei. Okay? So, two states, you know, they went to north, or what we call now north, was the Western Transvaal, you know. They had Botswana, and something else. And Bophuthatswana had 9 pieces. The whole day, we were even in a free state, in Bloemfontein, what happened? Yeah. Free state. We are one. But they wanted to create this thing that Mopedi, Mangope, there were 3 M's. Mangope, Mpofu, and Matanzi. You know? This became the super agents of colonization. You know? These are the people really who messed us up. You couldn't talk politics in Bophuthatswana. Zululand was better because it was in that British thing, and it has never had the Bantu homeland. You know? And all these other small little boom, what is this thing next to you? The Kwako. Mupidi. You know? So they divided us into 9 Tswana speaking units, so that there will be no coming together at all. Now, that's where we fail politically.
I want you to focus particularly on the liberation movements. But I understand the impact of the machinations of the system on black people. What about liberation movements? Because they had the agenda, they had the stated aim of uniting the people.
Yes, but remember also that while we had political parties, liberation movements, they had no freedom of movement, neither of speech. So everything you do, you must do it under the blanket. We could make it. So that, we can't say we failed. We didn't fail. We were gagged. You had the guillotine on your mouth. Yeah. But now that we came and got this nominal independence, the liberation movement should not concentrate in themselves. The program of building the nation should have continued, apolitical. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, our leaders became self-seekers. They concentrated on themselves and forgot the fact that the impact of 342 years of colonization, of oppression, deprivation, needs to be worked onto. We need healing. They didn't go that way. Instead, now you've got a parliament, which looks like a umbrella of titularism. With so many countries, you don't know whether you are in Europe or India or Africa or where. You can't. And that is where the laws are made. And you cannot transform those laws to what you think it should be. Very different.
So, Troops, you are saying that the liberation movement should have had what is called
a
common agenda,
Yeah.
which would have been pushed without disturbing or tainting individual movements. What you call
have one common program for bringing together
nation building.
Nation building. Yeah.
And that's where we failed.
That's where we fail.
Because when you go exile, each and every movement was pushing its own agenda. There was nothing like nation building.
I mean, even now,
Even today,
we've got 41 political parties in parliament. And others are roaming around here. We've got 71 of them all. They all speak 71 languages. It's a litany, the theme of freedom. It's a litany sung in different tongues. This is the problem. We can't, today, those 91 parties or 100 of them, you can't bring them together and say, now look, let's look at our country as an African country. They don't. They want to become not part and parcel of, but they must remain slaves in their own country. And that's why some of the countries cannot develop like ours here. We've got so much money, so many resources, both human and material. South Africa is the richest country. But we find it very difficult to stay without going to America and say, can you give us 2 million? We will pay you. And then they come here and increase that. You see? Because that, in any case, it's me and you who pays it. The consumer. No those shares. It is us, the ordinary person, The gold is there in, I had sometimes President Ramaphosa counting the minerals that we have in this country. There were over 14. Some take people to the moon, some make TVs, some make these things. The minerals from here.
Now we even have oil and
Now
gas.
we have oil and gas up what's in the sea. South African territorial water stretches 250 nautical miles. Here all is around. But we can't. We have to get shale to come into it.
So, yeah.
Now, you see, with the question of language, surely it's an uphill. It's an uphill. Because you can go anywhere, even in the rural areas. Small children, good morning, sir. How are you? We have completely changed. My children only became to know Setswana. We were speaking English. Because that is the language that could put us together with my wife is a Ugandan. I'm a South African. She speaks different language from mine. I speak different language from hers. So the only uniting language became English. But really, should the English be the language that will even take me to the grave? No. I'm home now. I've got freedom. Freedom to do what I want. I went outside not to go and speak English, but to come and accept myself. Culturally, traditionally, politically, and that is what we went to fight for. Now, we come back, we are little Englishmen, little Frenchmen. You go to the toilet, you sit in the toilet with a cross legs, like Frenchmen. And that is what we teach our children,
Maybe we should be learning how to develop our languages from even though the models that they basically present are based on violence. European civilization basically was based on violence.
On violence, yeah.
And conquest.
Conquest.
And that's not the route that we are going to take.
Now it will mean you must take pangas and go and conquer them.
Maybe a question should be, what is the importance of language? Seeing that maybe a motor Asian yak in his 40s, when I was 10, 15 years, Asoka Kenya Kulunza Sakas, Kapo Kulunza Saudi Bantu. Since one high, I can school Kulunza Mahua, have really Puya high hand. They can't even pronounce their own names.
Yeah.
Kase Africa.
That is the thing. That is the thing. We needed transformation. That was our A letter before any other thing. Transform national values. Now we took apartheid as it was and speak English and Afrikaans. We never face sort of how, And I can rest assured when it comes to languages, our friends, not our friends, our brothers, even if they are fighting to get their language, to teach their language, what are you fighting for? To speak English, the language of the Queen, 10,000 kilometers away. We should be fighting to humanize the languages that are heavily rested on the Nguni.
Mr Mothupi, there's also the fact that, I mean, our languages are not as different as they seem to us. It's only because of colonization.
Yeah.
There's a guy called Sandile Kamanzikani. This guy is showing how our languages, most of the words that we use, even street language, come from Khoisan languages.
Yeah.
Our languages are not different from them. Even our own language, Sesotho, Sezulu, they are not so different. It's just that, colonization has made us to
believe.
to focus
Yeah,
on, but these languages, they come from the same source. I mean, language basically comes from the first people, of course, the Khoi people, and this is how it evolves into tributaries. So that it's the same language, but we have been conditioned to see them as different, and this is what we focus. But if we can go back and relearn,
Yeah.
the way languages are taught, because of Bliek, because it's Willem Bliek who came with this thing that there are different, people, they are Khoisans, they are Bantus, they are those things. That's pure. It's pure nonsense. That thing. These languages, basically, if you go deeper, you'll be surprised. I mean, words like from Sositan, what's the greeting? Eta.
Eta.
That comes from the Khoisan language. Ngosi,
Yeah.
all those Khoi languages. It's surprising when you begin to experience that. That's why you see that, man, you have been duped, you have been duped. So, going back to that thing of developing an Afrocentric scholarship, so that language then maybe we start focusing on the connectedness of the languages.
Yeah.
Because why are we different? I mean, what makes us different? We never had, fights with Zulus or with Tongas. We used to stay together.
And you see, now the problem also, as I say, the education that we get, it has a purpose.
Yeah.
It is made to drive our psychological, our brains, our thinking. We must think in terms of that syllabus. Yeah, that program. You are programming, I usually call it conditioning education. It conditions your mind. We are, when, during our times, we used to go in Malaysia. We used to go to Bokhwera, Yeah, once you are 17 years, you are taken for 3 months. You are there, taught by the old people. Where does your manhood start? When to become a man? What time to become a man? When should you, as a man, get married? All those things. How should you respect a woman? Whatever. I was talking to my wife, I said, now, this is not what I'm saying. Before, I'm saying you know it. When I put higher there, when I put higher. No, no, I'm not having a month. Totally share. And we started looking for 3 months. How to go up and you said, I'm a Tasakama aborto. Yeah, the baby, the baby. Yeah, I'm a cabin, I'm Tasakali. Oh, yeah, then I'm not a woman or I go. Yeah, now we all discarded those traditional disciplines. You know, today we take what we learn in the book. Sex. About sex. And that is why Bana takes sex as a passion. I would say to his way. Oh. No, it's true. You know, one day in the evening in my village, I was from checking my post about 7 o'clock. Now there is an electric pole along the road. A boy and a girl having sex on that pole. And when 7 o'clock, you know the way that says, Awahara. Can you imagine that? I had to take off my heels. Easier. Now, these are the things that comes with this conditioning education. You see?
The other thing is that this whole conditioning has also distanced us from our ancient greatness.
That's it.
If you look at Sesotho, I'm sure it's the same thing. I know that, I mean, all African languages are eventually linked to the languages that were spoken in ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you look at the structure of Sesotho language. I mean, a word like Munna, you know, that comes out of Egyptian philosophy. Because Nona, you know, that's the beginning of life, the waters of Nona, you know. So what comes out of that is Mo, Nona, in the same way as Mo, Mora. Later it becomes Na because originally it was Nona and then the O comes off, you know. So you look at Ra, as Swana, I'm addressed as Ra, you know. That was after the waters of Nona comes Ra, you know, the first god, the ancient god, you know. All the structure of our languages comes from that philosophy. We are not even aware of that.
We are not even aware of it.
Because we have been taught that, no, those things, they happened long ago. They happened. All these words that we are using, they've got divinity inside of them. They are built out of the philosophy that came out of ancient Egypt.
That's the thing.
You know? But we don't know. Because we have been taught that, we haven't achieved anything. All we know. No. When did we come here? You know, this was civilization starts in Africa. It spreads. When you spread civilization. You don't just spread. This is why white people brought colonization here. They are from Europe. They came with their ideas already made. And, with us also, this is our civilization. But we've been made to forget that, especially by our education, which is still being maintained today, unfortunately.
Oh, yes.
In a free South Africa, we are still being taught that, we are separate from everybody else. And I remember one time my kids had what do they call them at school? These assignments that they have at school, and they were saying the biggest religions, the greatest religion is Islam. It's Christianity is the Jewish religion. I think the Indian. I said, but all these religions learn from Africa.
They came from here.
The oldest religion was in Africa. You know, the oldest holy book, was the Book of the Dead. You know, it comes from Africa, but it's sad that even when information is there, still we are in that silo, and we are keeping all these things out. But that's a very I think, important in the matter of education.
of education.
With that said, then you mentioned it was sorry, traditional ways of bringing up kids and all that.
Yeah.
Should that be turned into a school maybe?
Well,
that
it should be part of the syllabus.
Reintegrated because for instance, the system was practiced in Egypt. It was even practiced in a more developed way there because of, it was institutional. Because, in cities, that's where basically civilization is concretized, because there are resources there to invest in those things, and, So we came with that culture, but unfortunately, because we were weakened economically and what, these cultures, they are fading out. Because you don't have Tswana capital. Do you have Tswana capital?
No.
You can't develop Tswana culture. What is it based on? Civilization is based on economic resources, as I said, and the matter of independence. It's based on, if you don't have resources, how do you, develop your culture? You can't.
And Egypt itself was not just Egypt. All the peripheral countries were.
As you said, Nubia, yes.
Nubia.
Nubia.
See what I mean? They go. People go where there is civilization. They go there. There are a lot of economic activities there, and people are gravitated to there. That's why civilizations are made.
You see,
civilizations are cosmopolitan.
Yeah, they are cosmopolitan.
yeah. Now, the Bible actually has always been the steering wheel. It's been used as a steering wheel of
Conquest,
yeah,
and colonization.
yeah. But I remember in the school, 1944, we were told that when Herod wanted to kill Christ, Christ's parents took him to Egypt, put him in a basket or what, and let him float. Now, today it is not Jesus. It is somebody else, I can't remember. They twist it, Now, Jesus himself is an athlete. His parents came from Ethiopia here, Abyssinia. And it used to take 7 years from Abyssinia to Jerusalem. Because they believe in Judaism. And they go to pay homage. Just like Lakhana. People come from Namibia going to Lakhana. Now it used to take 7 years from Abyssinia to Jerusalem. So when they left Abyssinia, Mary was 10 years. With their parents. By the time Mary gets there, 17 years, she's ripe. You see? So I was chucked out of the church one day because I was telling the truth, which is being hidden. You can't be a man, the son of David, the son of Joseph, the son of somebody else. No. Just Jesus is the son of David. But because David is a Hebrew, could not marry Joseph, the Christ's mother, what is his name now? Mary. Could not marry him because the traditions did not agree. The Hebrews take themselves as about the Jews. Yeah. So that's how Jesus became the Jew. Because all these others, how he ran, they took him to Egypt. Because they wanted to kill him. because he's the son of David. He's going to inherit the kingdom. And the Christians didn't want that. They wanted to eliminate him. Although in any case, ultimately, they crucified him. We are not told. The Bible itself is very secretive about what happened.
A lot of things that happened.
See, the Bible also is it's a very interesting,
Well, no, that is what happened. You see, the conquering of Africa started with the Bible. And make sure that they don't go to towns. They go to the rural areas. You know? Give the give them gifts and convert them. You know? And preparing them to be the slave drivers of that theology. When the whites, the priests went to towns, they left the steps, the priests, to do the job. So they were driving this enslaving philosophy of religion. They were driving it, the kings. They were told, anybody who talked bad about Christ must face it. How many people did Herod kill? Yes, because he said, no, this boy is young. Can't become our hero. The men were slaughtered. You know? Now, this is another thing. We had our own religion. It is not say we knew God with the arrival of the West. We actually, the African people, took religion to Europe. The first pope in Rome was an African from Nuba, Hamilton. The first pope of Rome. From Africa. So they taught us nothing about Christianity.
Even the Bible itself,
Yeah.
it was compiled by African
By Africans,
intellectuals,
yeah.
you know, that were exported to Turkey. Those first, because there was no scholarship, there was no history of scholarship in
No.
Europe, you know. But we don't know those things.
That because it became the preserve of the white people. You know? But the reality is that life begins with Africans and they transmitted it to Europeans. The first man to preach in Rome was Hamilton from Nuba, which they call Egypt today. The pyramids are not built by Arabs, they were built by the Africans, the Nubians. The king pharaohs are not Arabs.
The word Pharaoh, by the way, you know, is there in the Sesotho languages. Whatever Pharaoh came, Pharaoh.
Yeah.
That's where Pharaoh comes from. The one who's sitting on the land at that time of ISIS.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's right.
Ushaba mabitso a bona bo Tuti wa ga Amun, you know. Tuti kana, that's where the word Muruti, Tuto comes from that. That's a preacher of Amun. He was schooled through. Well, you look at those names, you know. Those are African names. Dimos Soto. Hona Rudin Gilgam Soto.
Okay, so
You know.
now with all the immigration in Guyana, which is very the information that people will be looking for in the future. How do we then get back Africa to South Africa to believing in themselves and backbone and all of these things, and move a bit away from how they're doing things now, because in Chongolong we Europe, we are Afro, we are not in Afro, we are Eurocentric. The Africans are very Eurocentric.
But let me give you answer the question.
Transformation.
Education.
And how do we get that? Like, how do we then implement the
Structure.
I will-
We need to form a structure which will deal with things like those, The issues of scholarship,
You see-
African scholarship.
You see today, there are so many small groups coming up, all in the name of transformation. But really, it is not for transformation. It's for lining their pockets. Education is a process, it's not an event. You can't program an education. We shall do this from here to here. Next year, you change your robot labor. They are getting wise. You change, you bring something else. No. Education is a process. It's not an event. That's where we know you can go to the archives, monuments, and see where we went wrong. The arrival of the gun and the arrival of the Bible. The Bible gave birth to the gunpowder. Gunpowder gave birth to colonialism. Colonialism gave birth to imperialism. What? Now, because all these things are in the educational models. They are part of the syllabus. That's where educational transformation is very imperative in order to know where we are and how did we get there, and where are we going, how do we get there. Education, my friend, it's a terrible tool. Yeah. It's a terrible tool.
Our problem presently, especially in this country, is that we are broken up. There are people who are seriously working on studying an Afrocentric university. I had my colleagues. One of them died. Zulu. They have been working on these things. These are at the level of PhDs and professors. They don't have resources. The problem in this country is that the people who have the money, they are not financing the development.
And because that does not speak to their interest.
Yeah.
It does not speak to their interest.
But the brains are there. There are people who are struggling by themselves to do. There are many initiatives in the society. And if they come together, which goes back to the element of African nationalism, if all those things can be brought together, we are going to be very strong. We're going to be very strong. Some of the most educated people in this country are Africans. But we are kept away from those people because we don't know them. You stay next to somebody who's a nuclear physicist next to you, but you don't know, you just see this old man passing there. Because nobody will interview that person, This is how the system is maintained in this country. The media is playing a big role, in misinforming society, apart from education. So So we don't hurry it. You know when we get to that point, no it's about.
I just say,
Ne ke kopa re kwale mo because ke gale ba itse re loja.
oh no, what the lawyer? No, but they must bring food